Hello, Captain VFC here in the middle of a bit of a conundrum. You see, today we are looking at the Mistercraft J34 Acro Hunter, and I do not want this to just be me ragging into Mistercraft for however long it takes and just jumping on the bandwagon saying that it's a load of rubbish, why do they even make them? But I also want to give a fair review. So, what we're going to do, instead of the usual build analysis video of me just rambling about the build whilst it's on in the background, I'm going to do a more traditional build video. We're going to go over step by step because there is quite a lot that I want to mention about the construction. It is important, I feel. And then there's going to be a summary at the end where I will go over what I like and dislike about this kit. I kept an open mind when building it. After all, this is a 1999 tool, so it's not exactly some antique piece of rubbish, but I still somewhat maybe didn't quite enjoy myself as much as I hoped despite loving this plane. So, what we're going to do, as I say, break this video down. I suggest you get yourself 2 drinks, something nice, maybe a cup of tea, something easy drinking whilst you watch the first bit, which, something you can drink in 14 minutes, cup of tea in 14 minutes, I think that's about right. And then maybe pour yourself a stiff drink for the summary afterwards. I know I sure am. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want, and you can even become a channel member if you particularly want as well. Details below and also at the end of the video. So, cup of tea ready, pause it if not. Let's see what happened. Construction begins, as you may expect, with the cockpit. It is comprised of a little cockpit tub sort of thing, just the main floor and sides, and the back is a headrest, and that's pretty much it. It is those 2 parts. There is also a control column that you will see me putting in as well. I actually ended up removing that because I chose to put a pilot in here, as you'll see very shortly. But back of the seat just goes on top. There is almost no depth to it. It's more of an impression of an interior. It's marginally better than having nothing in there at all. I suppose it's one step above just having a seat on a pin. But there we go. It's those 3 bits. Perfectly fine, not very detailed, not overly accurate, but it's, like I say, it'll do. It's better than having nothing. The fuselage half was cut off the sprue and it had a few marks left over, so I was trimming that there with the knife. And then lots of dry fitting involved in this build, making sure everything fits nicely. I have to use the starboard side of the fuselage for this. You'll find out soon. There we go. Look, it's solid. I mentioned this in the unboxing video, card above if you didn't see that. But the fuselage had so much flash over it that it ended up with this wonderful gift of extra plastic blocking the cockpit. Wonderful, just what I've always wanted. So that was just trimmed, sanded down, and then the cockpit glued into the side of the fuselage. There is an awful lot of dry fitting that you will see me do. I know I've already mentioned it, but every step of the way this was tested multiple times before committing anything to glue. In a strange twist from my normal routine, I'm putting a pilot in this. Now, it doesn't come with a pilot. This is a spare Airfix one. I can't remember what kit it came from. Probably the Airfix Hawk, I would expect. But anyway, as there is no pilot with the kit, there is no mention of instruction, so I just painted them in a sort of a green colour and left it at that. Oh, and obviously the skin in a skin colour. Before the interior itself is then painted black. The instructions actually mention to paint it J, duck egg blue, although the paint chart at the bottom of the instruction says that J is carmine red. So I painted it black because that's the standard colour for RAF aircraft of this era. I don't know whether they meant it to be duck egg blue or red, but I certainly don't think either. Now, speaking of instructions, you'll notice that step 1 is the ejection seat, step 2 is the cockpit installation, step 1 shown there, nice, step 2 not really shown. Step 3 is the landing leg, maybe. It's also the exhaust, possibly. Step 4 is the fuselage assembly, which is fine, and then 5 is the right wing, but over there you've got 7, which I believe is gluing the right wing, which you then fit in part 5. Part 6, unsure. Part 4, none of this makes any sense, right? Just the order is just bizarre. Anyway, speaking of the exhaust, you're going to notice I didn't fit it. That is deliberate. It was a solid block. I'll try and show it off at the end of the video, but it just wasn't worth it. I would rather have a hole and see straight through as if it's preserved without an engine than fit such a god-awful part. But, yeah, like I say, I'll try and show that at the end. Anyway, fuselage can now be glued together. Note how there is a tiny bit of interior detail for the wing roots, the engines, relative to the Revell one where there is absolutely nothing. It may just be a small plank that blocks it off, but that is, in my opinion, better than nothing. So there we go. We've gained a point against the Revell one. Fantastic. There are no locating pins anywhere on this kit, so it's very much lining it up as best you can. But the fit itself was absolutely fine, and then it was just held in place with clamps and tape. On to the wings. Now, the wings are comprised of a top and bottom piece for port and starboard. The fit was better on one of them than the other, only by a margin, but still, it wasn't very consistent. One of them, I think it was this one, basically just put itself on and was like, oh, that's perfect. Yeah, no attention needed whatsoever, whereas the other one needed some sanding down. It doesn't appear to have had any flash. I think it was just manufactured with slightly different tolerances than I would really expect. Not very consistent, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But still easy enough to sort out. Nothing that should really challenge anyone. Just, as you see here, a bit of a rub with some sandpaper, and then it fits in quite nicely. The detail on the wings is okay, I suppose. The whole kit has panel lines, but we'll go into that afterwards. But recessed panel lines, and they're fine. I'm doing one without any weapons pylons. Now, strictly speaking, that is incorrect. The version that I did, the Swedish version, did actually fly with weapons pylons, but they look so bad, I decided to chisel them off, which is what I've just done there. Horizontal tail surfaces is just this one piece covering both back wings, and it took a lot of work to get it to fit properly. The wing was too big relative to the hole, so it required a lot of sanding, filing, and just general more abuse than I'd like. In the end, once I dry fit it was almost in. I thought, you know what, the glue will work, and I just glued it and shoved it against the desk, as you saw there. Just gave it a decent smack until finally it was in. It is, however, perfectly straight, as in horizontal. That's not a problem. It was just squeezing it in to actually get it to fit. The wings have this sort of tab which goes inside the wheel well. Interesting. The fit is fine. The tab gives it a little bit of extra bite, but not as much as it would be if it was more of a traditional socket in the fuselage and tab covering the whole of the wing. But hey, it's fine. It will do. It's maybe not the most efficient solution, but it certainly works. And so both wings were therefore applied and lined up by eye against the tail to make sure that they were more or less straight. As you can see, it has not taken long to get this far. Already it's looking like a Hunter. In fact, I built this in not very much time at all, relative to something like the Revell Hunter, which I lost interest with for no fault of its own, really. It was just my mood. Filler. Yes. Yep, definitely use some filler. This was the Revell filler. It's just what I have to hand. All of the other fillers that I have ended up seizing up, and this is all I could get from the local shop. So copious amounts in the wing roots. This was just a case of bad fit. The wings simply have too much of a groove between the fuselage and the wing, so I used plenty of filler on the bottom and the top. Also in the unboxing I mentioned that there are a few sink marks in the top of the wing roots on the fuselage part, and some on the bottom as well. Just anyway, some of these blemishes, and I used the filler to bulk that up as well before sanding them down to try and cover up those potholes. Is it fair to say potholes? I mean, actually, maybe that was Mistercraft's plan. I say Mistercraft, it's not Mistercraft tooling originally, but it's a British aircraft, so what's more British than having potholes on it, right? I should have mentioned it's a ZTS plastic tooling originally, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, 1999, but didn't say it was ZTS plastic. But anyway, yes, just some work with some filler and some sandpaper. Again, nothing really difficult about this. Nothing, it doesn't make itself. You do have to put the work in, but none of this is particularly stressful. All just absolutely fine. Once everything is sanded down, we get to go to one of my favourite features of this entire kit, something which I didn't appreciate until I was actually making it at this stage. It brought a smile to my face, and that was gluing part 16 to the aircraft. What's so significant about part 16? Well, part 16, as shown here, is the missile, the bracket, and the other bracket. It's also the gun pods, that's part 16, and on the other side as well, that is part 16. But rather than any of these part 16s, I was actually gluing this part 16, which is the air brake. Also not to be confused with the other part 16, which I believe is the rear wing there or something. So the gun pods go on, which are incidentally part 15 according to the sprue map. I don't know why there are so many part 16s. It's ridiculous. I mean, did nobody proofread this? But then I guess since you have to put part 3 after part 4, as in the assembly step 4 goes after step 3 but before the other step 3, maybe genuinely nobody had actually proofread the instructions. Anyway, look, I'm trying to be fair, and I am already getting angry, but the gun pods go on. As I said, part 15, we'll just omit the somewhat inconsistent instructions before we then put the other gun pod on and then glue part 16, the air brake, onto the bottom of the fuselage. I believe it's the air brake anyway, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, part 16, that's the genuine part 16, not any of these other lying fake part 16s out there to trap you and trick you. No, that's the genuine real deal part 16 there. In case the start of the video or the thumbnail was not obvious enough, we are doing this with undercarriage up, which means we now move on to sticking parts 16, 16 and 16 over the wheel. Well, I'm joking, they're actually 12, 13 and 14, but the part 16 thing is now stuck in my head. The wheel wells were not the right size at all. I mean, they were different sizes from each other, and so the undercarriage the undercarriage doors did not fit in at all. Now, fair enough, this was not made to have the wheels up. This is me doing that because I couldn't be bothered at this point to put any weight in it, and this is the least effort that I wanted to put in. Once I'd started building it, I realised it was going to be lower effort. So I've had to open up a little bit, just cut with a knife, remove a little bit of excess material. Again, it's not a flash issue. There's very little flash other than, obviously, the one blocking the cockpit, but it was just the way that it was made. One was bigger than the other. But on the nose, undercarriage doors were fine. Under the wing, undercarriage doors just needed a bit of removal. That's fine. So, painting. The whole thing has been primed in black, and then I chose Sea Grey 71.049 from Model Air. First time I've ever used Model Air paint, weirdly. I don't have any specific Swedish colour sets or anything. I did a quick search online. This seemed to be about right. I was painting another aircraft at the same time, which I'm not going to spoil, and that suggested a grey like this, whereas Mistercraft suggested a more blue colour. I'm going to trust the other kit over this one, but also I looked at plenty of photos. They do appear to be more grey than blue. Anyway, the paint went on absolutely fine. Really impressed with this. Like I say, first time spraying Model Air, so any Vallejo airbrush ready paint, in fact. But yeah, it just went on really well, and I think it looks really nice. Nothing clever with any blotching or pre-shading or anything like that. I'm just spraying the paint onto the plane. I did actually have more plans for this, however, yeah, it didn't work. The top, however, is a Hataka RLM 83. So, yes, I get it, it's a German colour, but it's basically an olive drab, dark green with a bit of brown in it. Again, looking at the pictures, this felt about right. I did also look for Model Air and look through their range, but honestly, I have so many Hataka greens, it doesn't really matter. This was sprayed on with a very wide spray. I just went for coverage at this point. I thought, you know what? Don't care. Again, no mottling, no clever paint effects. I will work on that at some point, but I just wanted to get it done, quite frankly. Also, the wings weren't masked, but as you can see, the fuselage lines were masked. And there we come to an interesting point. I'm just going to say that I masked it based on the panel lines, okay? It's always easier to mask where the panel lines are. Bear that in mind. Okay, good. Tape removed. Line, very, very straight. Very, very pleased with this paint job. It looks lovely. Then the whole thing got a coat of gloss varnish before the decals. These are going to require a little bit of extra torque in the summary, but that little Acro Hunter one that I put on was so thin and so transparent that you can't even see it. Look at that. What is that? That is not a super decal. I've started getting angry already. It's not even the summary. I need to crack open the tequila or something. Anyway, they were mostly fine. The Swedish roundels, this was the worst one, which did disintegrate a little bit. Not a big issue. And the others were pretty good, actually. So here it is, the finished product and summary time. Now, firstly, I did say that I was going to show you the jet piece, the engine nozzle, not nozzle, you know what I mean, that goes at the end. However, I can't seem to find it. I obviously cut it off the sprue, and I don't know where I've put it, but it was a solid lump, basically. It would look like somebody's just plated over the back of the aircraft. You can imagine that it was a bad piece. Right. Now, I don't want to just, as I say, rip into Mistercraft and say how bad this kit is, so what I'm going to do right out the way is I'm going to talk about an obvious positive with this kit, okay? This is a pretty sturdy box. Look at that. Proper reinforced cardboard ends and side. This is a very decent base to have a kit in. The top a little bit flimsy, but it doesn't matter. But there, that is a full, decent box. So I have to talk about the instructions. We're ignoring the history section at the front because they're non-native English speakers. It's not good, even for Eastern European kits. It is one of the worst that I've seen. So the instructions, the actual diagrams, more or less show you how to make the kit. I mean, that's easy enough to follow. It's all good. It tells you different tanks and tells you what the missiles are. It's got plenty of information on there. But that's about where the positive side of things ends. The steps, the whole step situation is ridiculous. Step 1, fair enough. So far, so good. Step 2, that makes sense. Why are there 2 step 3s? There's a step 4 there, a step 4 down here, there's a step 5 here, then 6, and then you're going back over there to 7, having already done step 5, and then you go to the other half of the instructions, and they just give up on the step scheme altogether. It's just mind-bogglingly stupid, is what it is. Then there's the colour chart, as I mentioned. There it is down there. It explains all of the colours. They're not even all properly here, as in the instructions. I don't know what most of them are. I think most of them are actually for the end results, but honestly, it's just rubbish. No consistency in what it tells you to paint the inside relative to the letters. Wonderful. Another quick point. I mentioned that I was chopping the weapons pylons off. Well, down the bottom it shows you how to glue them on, but there were already parts where those holes are, so I don't actually know how that would work. It doesn't make any sense. Obviously there must be a way. They must have designed it with fitting weapons in mind, but it's already got pylons moulded as part of the wing. Why do you now need a separate pylon? It just doesn't make sense. And that's not even going into the whole number 16 debacle, but I covered that in the build, so we don't need to do any more part 16 ranting. Okay, so box evaluated, instructions reviewed. Now let's look at the actual aircraft. So a quick note about dimensions. I felt that this looked a little bit off. I have measured it and lined it up next to drawings of the Hunter, and it is almost exactly the same as the Revell one in terms of basic dimensions like the wingspan and the length and the height. So actually, there is no problem with the size. It is certainly a representation of a Hunter that is in proportion. Other than one thing, which is different from the Revell one, and that is the rear shape. In fact, hold that thought. I thought it would just be easier to show you the Revell one and show you what I'm on about. So if we look at the arse end of the fuselage, you'll notice that it is considerably skinnier on the Mistercraft one. As far as I can see, that is wrong. Certainly from photos, this looks much more accurate. A much thicker tube all the way along, whereas here it just sort of gets to the start of the tail and just drops at an alarming rate. The overall shape, however, and the positioning of the detail is more or less the same on both. And also, I did say that there was an advantage over the Mistercraft one, which is where the engine is. It at least has a bit of plastic that blocks it off so you can't see anything, whereas here it doesn't have anything at all and you can just see straight through the wing, and it's very strange. But that is about where the positivity ends on the comparison between the two. So we need to talk about the panel lines. It has fine recessed detail, which is perfectly adequate. That there's not a problem with that. And I painted the divide between the green and the grey on the panel lines exactly as I said, but you may notice that this side is much higher than this side, and that is because the panel lines are nowhere near even. They are so much higher on the starboard side of the fuselage than they are on the port. They are not consistent at all. I would rather do it like this, however, and match the panel lines and just have it wrong on the other side. I mean, realistically, you're never going to be able to look at the port and starboard side at the same time, and you'd have to really look at it nose on to notice. So the end result I can deal with, but it's not the sign of a good kit if they don't even know where on the fuselage the damn panel lines are supposed to be. The undercarriage doors, as I mentioned, they're not designed to be closed. No big issue, but they're, again, the doors are the same size. The wells within the wings are completely different sizes. What is up with that? The air brake looks nothing like what it should. This whole build up to it, it's just nonsense. Like that has a little flap. You can kind of see what it. You can kind of see how it works. You know, you can look at it and go, "Oh yeah, that's obviously what it does." Whereas this, no, just no. The decals are the second most annoying feature. Honestly, what is that? It's not even focusing. It's probably not focusing because the camera doesn't recognise it as a decal. You can just kind of see this tiny bit of silvering. If it weren't for the silvering, you wouldn't know that there's anything there at all. It is shockingly poor quality. These ones, which are supposed to be the same colour, that's the same yellow. They're supposed to be yellow. Or, well, I suppose it's gold, isn't it? But you know what I mean. They're fine. And even the identification number, 9, on the starboard side, absolutely fine. Again, it's gold. It's clear. This one chipped a little bit. You can see that I did manage to repair the fuselage roundel, just not the 9. The rest of that fell off and fell on the floor and long gone. But how have they managed to get this right and this so wrong? Also, as I mentioned in the unboxing, the registration is way off. The red is supposed to be in the middle. It is not. It is clearly off-centre. Again, inconsistent, not very good. The decals were more or less laughable, and this is the best version of it from what I can tell. The canopy fits, though. And then to demonstrate the most annoying feature of this kit, the one which, let's face it, everything else I could probably overlook and still get a decent kit out of it. But this last point completely ruins it for me. It turns it from a bad kit, but an okay experience, to being a frustrating heap of junk. And that is the hole in the fuselage. Look at that. Why? Just why? Why? It is such a big hole that you can get my trusty stick straight through it. Why would a kit need this feature? I know designing a kit can be tricky, but there must have been a better solution than to just cut the side of the fuselage out and have that blanking plate there instead. It's so frustrating, honestly. So then, final thoughts. Value for money, this is £11. The Revell one isn't available at the moment. I have seen it online for just over 20, sort of between 20 and 25. That feels about right. I mean, I paid, I think, about a tenner for the Revell one, but that's because it was in a sale, so it's a bit unfair to say, oh, it's cheaper and it's better. So for 11 quid, you can definitely do better. You can get a new Airfix kit. You can get a Mustang. Okay, it's a smaller aircraft, but you could get P-51. You can get a Vampire. I mean, you can get a Meteor for £24. Twice as expensive. Is it twice as good? No, it's more than twice as good. It's just much, much better. As a building experience, you can do worse, and I suppose you know what, if you don't mind the fact that you can go straight through the side of the fuselage, you can clearly see that from most angles as well, and the fact that the panel lines don't match and that the decals might disintegrate, or of course you're happy to use aftermarket decals, then you know what, it's not horrific. It's not that bad. Is it a good kit? No, absolutely not. Also, because I didn't put the engine piece in, you can see the back of the pilot seat. And that's not me having to go at the kit, that's just an observation. Look at that. I had originally planned to display it flying above either this Hunter or another aircraft, which shall be on the channel shortly. However, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. It was okay, but I can't imagine this is going to sit around for very long. I was just laughing at it towards the end. I was just laughing, going, is this what you think a good kit should look like? In line with my rating system then, how do I score this out of 10? Well, I'm going to give it a this exists, I guess, out of 10. Right, rant over. Thank you for humouring me, for lasting this long into the video. Do you agree with me? If you don't, fair enough. You're entitled to your own wrong opinions, I guess. But let me know. Will I buy another one? No. Don't forget to hit like if you want, it really helps videos out. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, and if you are inclined to hit the notification bell, then please do as well. If not, just check back in regularly and it's okay. You can be a channel member if you want to be a channel member. I will shout you out when you join, you'll get sneaky photos, and there will be members polls and things coming up as well when member numbers increase, that sort of thing. But don't worry, all content will still be available on the channel for free either way. I might feature Mistercraft again on the channel, because I know that Mistercraft is not all horrifically bad kits. There are some good ones out there. I just don't want to have to spend a fortune trying to find it. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.